Olá, bem-vindo à Moztech. Agora vamos falar sobre os serviços financeiros digitais e o nosso convidado de hoje é Rotimi Morohunfola, que é CEO do United Bank for Africa. Esta é a personalidade com quem, nos próximos minutos, vamos refletir sobre 5 pontos que têm a ver com as tecnologias financeiras que estão a ser adotadas por muitas instituições e como é que estas podem ser, de facto, aproveitadas e beneficiar, portanto, os cidadãos, numa altura em que, por exemplo, o acesso à internet no nosso país ainda é um desafio. Como é que, de facto, as tecnologias financeiras podem ajudar os cidadãos a terem acesso, portanto, aos mercados. Vamos também refletir um pouco sobre questões relacionadas com a regularização, portanto, deste setor. E, por fim, porque também estamos no contexto da pandemia do novo coronavírus, vamos ver que tipo de ações é que o United Bank for Africa tem adotado neste, portanto, contexto. Bom, e a nossa entrevista vai ser, portanto, na língua inglesa e teremos tanto, portanto, a transcrição ou a tradução, portanto, da nossa entrevista para permitir que também os telespectadores possam acompanhar na sua íntegra. Well, first of all, I would like to welcome you, Mr. Rotimi Morohunfola, CEO of United Bank for Africa, and to thank for your availability to join us to Moztech. The financial technologies are becoming increasingly relevant in our country and worldwide, leading people to have access to financial services. And my first question to you is, how can we ensure that there is inclusion of the people in financial services when country is still struggling, for example, with difficulties such as access of the internet?
Thanks, Martin. First of all, I want to appreciate the fact that I'm having this opportunity to be part of the 7th edition of Moztech. Moztech, like we all know, is a very big event that brings technology enthusiasts together to discuss the roadmap for technology advancement and implementation in our country, Mozambique. You've raised a very valid point, which is about financial inclusion. And obviously, technology has a very pivotal role to play in financial inclusion. But first of all, I will say, in the space of digital technology, as a matter of fact, even the United Nations in their 2030 Sustainable Development Goals have already set technology as a critical way of ensuring that there is sustainable development across continents and across developing countries like Africa, for example. Now, as a matter of fact, in the context of Mozambique, today, for financial inclusion, the Central Bank of Mozambique is playing a very critical role in ensuring that financial institutions, banks like United Bank for Africa, are having to branch out into locations that ordinarily may not have had banking services available. But that is in the context of brick and mortar. We all know that there is a limit to what physical presence, which is brick, can do in providing financial services. So we are at a point where we are moving financial services from brick to what we say click. And that is now speaking to digital technology. As a matter of fact, to drive digital technology in developing countries like we find ourselves, there's a need for a lot of infrastructure to be made available to support the rollout of fiber optics, for example, broadband, and things that make accessibility available to the regular person. One thing that is going to be a critical driver of that inclusion and the perspective, or from the perspective of digital technology, is actually bridging the gap between the rural and urban areas. So, for example, we find ourselves in Maputo, everybody possibly just goes to the phone or one device or the other, and you have internet access. But can I say that about every part of Mozambique today? So the need to ensure that there's a widespread rollout of technology infrastructure that supports digital rollout is very, very important for financial inclusion in that space, as a matter of fact.
Okay. So in your point of view, how can you ensure that people can have access of the internet? We have something like different situations, the rural areas and the urban areas. We have in cities our 11 cities, all people are connected, most of them. But in rural areas, we still have large people in the communities who doesn't have a smartphone, for example, to make one click to access the financial services, to have access of another service that are available from the technologies. So how can we connect the people regarding this kind of differentiations that exist?
Okay. Yeah, that's a very, very valid point. Obviously, when you go to the urban centers, you'll find that there's access to much more sophisticated technology.
Yeah.
But I think we should step back a little bit and look at, first of all, in Mozambique, what is the tele-density we have? Yeah. So currently we are just at about 50-55% tele-density, meaning the penetration of digital technology, which is essentially about the availability to have mobile telephony. Yeah. Now, in that context, let's even say we have 50 or 55%. We need to get to a point where even without an Android phone, when you're using a feature phone, you can still access services. Okay. So today, for example, services like the USSD are available that are used for people that don't have sophistication on their phones. Demography has been a major advantage for Mozambique. And by demography, I'm speaking to the fact that we have a very strong youthful population. Yeah. These are people who ordinarily are getting very well exposed to the global environment. So you find young people who want to be on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. And because of that demography, having a youthful population, there's a need as well to now see how we domesticate some of our offerings in Mozambique to reach the people who are not even very literate when it comes to speaking Portuguese or some international languages. Okay. How do we ensure that locally in Mozambique, we are able to domesticate or customize digital content to the people that are going to use them? That way you will see a wider adoption and you will see a much more widespread use of even financial services when it comes to digital. So domestication is very important, and obviously cost of that service becomes also very important. So if we want something that will be widely acceptable and widely adopted, then it should be affordable as well, that people see that there is an advantage in using this platform.
Okay, so talking about the cost of the access, how can the development of national technology solutions for financial service can be encouraged to make an attractive to the national and perhaps African and world markets?
Well, to be fair, for any project of this sort to make meaning and to have a widespread success, I will say you cannot take away the need for public and private sector partnership. Okay. So obviously the public sector, which is government in this case, will provide a lot of enabling environment, infrastructure, electricity that ensures that if I have to put a mast in a remote location in Mozambique, if I have to do fiber optics, there is sufficient infrastructure supporting that. When you see that level of partnership, you will now find that investment will go into that sector. And we all know that the more investment you have into any project at all, the more, on the longer term, the cost of that service provision becomes much more subdued. And then you see affordability. So I think encouraging people to go into investment in that area will be very critical. And obviously, we'll be also leveraging on the support that government will provide just to ensure that the environment is right for investment.
Okay. Our third point is the regularization of regularization issues still leaves a lot sleeve clothed in spite of the advances registered in recent years. And digital financial service providers still suffer from the need to introduce a regulatory framework. So how to overcome this problem?
Martin, I will say to you, That's been a major challenge when it comes to financing services, financial services as a whole. Now, we're all aware of the incoming of fintechs into the digital financing space. In some contexts, it looks like a disruption, but the reality is that disruption is good and positive because it essentially tilts the equation and makes everyone start to think of what is next ahead. Now, regulation that you did mention is an area that we have to be able to strike a balance. Now, obviously, for financial institutions, bank financial institutions, there's a lot of regulation around providing services on digital platforms. And why is that so? Because of KYC, know your customer. It is perhaps less so for fintechs, but the reality is that when you go into the financial intermediation space, you need to be sure of the counterparts you're dealing with. Now, in the world today, we hear so much of anti-money laundering and several things that ensure that you want to be able to follow the flow of funds to the last mile. So regulations, yes, to support rollout of digital infrastructure, rollout of digital channels and initiatives, obviously should be well supported. But I will be of the view that regulations should also ensure that we do not lower our guards when it comes to knowing the parties that are going to be involved in that financial process, so that risks are not taken unduly and you don't get into a bigger trouble by trying to introduce digital financing solutions.
Okay, so now let's talk about United Bank for Africa, and I would like to know from you what is the strategical position of UBA in Mozambique leading to these finance technologies.
Thank you so much, Martin. Obviously, I would like to say that UBA, United Bank for Africa, is primarily committed to the growth of African countries. And to that extent, in all of the 20 locations in Africa where we have a presence, a footprint, there's consistent focus in ensuring that the bank is one of systemic importance. Meaning we are adding value to the lives of every individual in those economies and supporting the growth of the different critical sectors that drive those economies. As a bank, beyond even financial services, we have within our group an entrepreneurship program under the Tony Elumelu Foundation that ensures that young Africans who have a vision of doing one thing or the other that are quite unique in their ways, but are only challenged in the area and context of having capital, seed capital, get support. So the TEF Foundation essentially provides seed capital to young entrepreneurs to be able to fulfill their dreams. And we realize that the more and more people of that category are able to get into production activities, into service offerings, then we are building the next generation of successful African entrepreneurs. Okay. That platform provides not just seed capital, it provides mentorship, it provides capacity building and all of that ensures that, yes, the future African entrepreneurs are well positioned to take the continent to the next level. Now to the context of UBA itself. Digital technology is our space. Okay. The bank has invested significantly, phenomenally in the area of digital channels. As a matter of fact, and without being boastful, I do believe that within the continent of Africa, UBA is perhaps one of the leading institutions that has invested significantly in technology. Because we realize that it is not just the future, it is already with us here today. So within that space and context, you find that, first of all, we are able to unify all of our operations across 20 countries. So today, you bank with UBA, you have the same experience across 20 countries in Africa and 3 countries outside of Africa. We are present in the United States, in the UK, and in France. And what that does is it allows ease of transactions between counterparts. Transaction banking, like you will imagine, is strongly supported by digital offerings, transaction banking and cash management, both for corporate entities and for individuals. So, as an institution, we have an array of channels that provide you that unique experience that brings flexibility, speed, comfort, simplicity, as well as security. One of the things I find is that when you're having a conversation with persons you're talking to about digital channels, the natural fear is, okay, I'm just talking to a computer, I'm just punching on a device, am I sure that I'm safe? But we have been able to ensure that safety is at the bedrock of every channel we design and we develop. And as an institution, one thing we do very well is to continue to disrupt ourselves. So even when we have rolled out a channel, we look at it and say, okay, in the next 1 year, how relevant will this be? And then we have a team of people who just start to break that thing down again and see what next to come up with that becomes very innovative and obviously attractive to the market.
So it means that today is possible to have UBA in the pocket. We do not have to go to the bank.
Absolutely, absolutely. UBA is in my pocket, UBA can be in your pocket. As a matter of fact, we have been able to take digital offerings to a level that touch points, contact points are much more reduced when it comes to physical contacts. As a matter of fact, you will imagine that even with COVID-19, the need for remote channels have become exceedingly important. So today you have a UBA channel in your pocket, you have the world at your fingertips. Just a click away, you have financial services available to you. One of the things, just to mention, that we've been able to do, for example, we are rolling out contactless POSs. Now you get into a merchant shop, you do not have to touch a POS and put in your PIN. Because we know, again, people are conscious of the environment they find ourselves today.
Okay.
We also have collection channels and platforms that ensure that remotely you can collect from the people who need to pay you. We have web collection that essentially you just go online to the internet and make a payment. It could be a payment for taxes, payment for utilities, payment for anything you can imagine. Because we realize that, one, the need for distancing is important today, but beyond that, and on the longer run, convenience is what we want to offer every client of UBA.
Okay, can you list the opportunities and challenges that in the context of the great digital advances?
The digital space is a very, very wide space, and like you can imagine, it's just still unfolding. We have seen technology move from all different kind of stages. Today, we talked about robotics at some point, nanotechnology. Today, artificial intelligence is all over the place. So you can imagine that the opportunities in terms of even employment creation, job creation is so wide. Young people today, I find quite a number of them who remotely by themselves are doing a whole lot digitally. You can imagine spaces like e-commerce, for example, which is powered by digital. Young entrepreneurs, without having a shop, without having to spend anything on infrastructure, are doing business and are doing exceedingly well. That's actually one of the things we are sponsoring and promoting under the Tony Elemelu Foundation as well. And just to ensure that with the opportunity that the digital and technology space puts on the table, lives of every individual are made better, much better. So I think in the context of Mozambique, young people have a lot of opportunity to do a lot of things by themselves, job creation, self-employment, as it were. But more than anything else, it actually puts a lot of convenience in the hands of any person that is connected to these channels.
Okay.
I would like just to mention, for example, United Bank for Africa pioneered what we call WhatsApp banking or Facebook banking across Africa. This was actually celebrated at Facebook by Facebook itself. And it's something we're proud of because we realize that being able to integrate financial services with day-to-day living, with lifestyle, it's the way to go so that you do not do banking like you're doing something out of your normal day-to-day routine, but you just do banking easily, freely, and happily. Okay. Not those days of staying in front of a banking hall and waiting to be served. You have banking at your fingertips. Click away. Okay. That is it.
Okay, despite of great investment made by United Bank for Africa, what do you think is the main threat nowadays in terms of digital financial services?
Well, I will say it in this form. Obviously, many times when we analyze financial services, there's a tendency to think the incoming of fintechs becomes a threat. But incoming of fintechs, in my view, will come as a complementary way of offering financial services to the wider population, financial inclusion essentially. Incoming also of mobile telephony, incoming of licenses, for example, to telephone operators to be able to do banking as well, comes in some form like a kind of threat, but the reality is that collaboration is something you can never take away in this space. Okay. And that's why, as a matter of fact, for a financial institution today, beyond planting branches, beyond starting to open new offices, the importance of investing in digital technology, because that is what actually the market is gravitating into, and that is what the fintechs are leveraging on, becomes the area to focus on. So threats, yes, they occur every day across different spectra, but the reality is that take advantage of every challenge, find the opportunity in it, capitalize on it, and then grow therein. So for us as an institution, we are not afraid of the threat that may come from any of the disruptions, because even as a bank, we disrupt ourselves. We see ourselves ultimately not just as a financial institution, a banking financial institution, but a service provider. If service requires it going from brick and mortar to digital, then service is what we offer, and so we leverage on that platform to provide service.
Okay. There is a general perception of digital service. Some people think that when they use the financial digital service, they pay twice to the bank, because first they have to pay the internet, then they have to pay the tax from the bank. So how can you explain the advantages of the digital services?
No, to be fair, I will say to you, Martino, that with the provision of digital services, costs to the consumer are significantly reduced. Okay. The perception that you're paying twice is really not founded, but I understand, because sometimes you see charges but come to imagine today, if my bank was in Zimpeto and I have to drive to Zimpeto to get banking services. The man hours I will lose, the money I will spend on gas, and even the delay I will have possibly when I get into a queue in the bank. When you quantify that in terms of cost, you realize that having access at your fingertips with your own device makes a whole lot of difference. Now, let me also say to you, yes, cost at the initial start point may be considered as a little bit high, but you realize, like I did mention earlier, that as these channels are being rolled out more and infrastructure is also being more widespread, cost of doing business will reduce significantly. And you find that at the end of the day, digital offerings can actually be free. For example, in our bank today, some channels are free, totally free, because what we want is not the cost that you pay to us by utilizing that channel, but the relationship and the business we're able to do and the service you enjoy that ensures that you continually do business with the bank. So costs, I will think, is not an issue. As a matter of fact, digital technology brings cost efficiency.
Okay, so now let's talk about the impact of the pandemic COVID-19, and I would like to know what technological solution are available to the bank such United Bank for Africa's clients.
Right.
Have you draw the specific service to the customers just to help them from the impacts of the COVID-19?
Okay. Just to mention, you did, since we are speaking of COVID-19, I just want to also mention that one of the things that United Bank for Africa did when the COVID cases became quite a global thing was that as an institution and as part of our corporate social responsibility, we were very quick to support the Mozambican economy and government by putting some funds available just to support any kind of intervention that the government will be considering in the context of COVID-19. We're glad we were able to do that. And then, of course, we have also heightened the availability of our channels, looking at the impacts of COVID and trying to ensure that there is an array of products that customers and consumers will have that ensure that they do not have to go to the bank. So, for example, I will mention, why do we go to the bank sometimes to make certain payments? Today, like I did mention earlier, we have web collect solutions that corporate entities could use to have collection of whatever is due to them without the payers having to go to any location to pay. Just digitally, they log on and they make a payment. We also have internet banking platforms that allows payment of multiple beneficiaries at a click of a button. So you want to make a payment to 5,000 people at once, you don't have to send sheets of paper or schedules to financial institutions, to the bank, to say, make this payment for this counterpart. We have a bulk file upload capability on our internet banking that ensures multiple beneficiaries can be paid. I did mention that we are on the verge of implementing contactless POSs.
Yes.
We have the artificial intelligence channel, which is the WhatsApp banking. It's called Leo. It's very interesting, Martino. You're chatting like you're talking to your friend, and you're doing banking.
Yeah.
You're transferring funds, you're checking your balance, you're checking your statement. That is the way banking has become today. And for us as an institution, because we realize that more and more there will be need for consciousness when it comes to physical touch points, we have made channels available for people to be able to have access and ease remotely without having to go to the physical four walls of a bank. We do remittances as well. And today, we're implementing certain things that I may not go into the details of, but it ensures that when you have a remittance flow, you can have access to it without going to the banking premises. So that, in our way, is just ensuring that people are able to do banking transactions, access banking services and offerings, and yet are comfortable that they are safe within the confines of their own homes or offices.
Okay. In context of the impact of COVID-19, these solutions, technological solutions that United Bank for Africa adopted to facilitate the services, the banking service, such as e-banking, transformed the UBA as a bank of the future?
We are, first of all, a bank that has been there. So UBA has been there for 71 years. We are there today, but more than anything, we are so proud of what we have built and what we are putting in place for the future ahead. And so, yes, in that context, we're the bank of the future. We're the bank to look at because, like I did mention in some of my opening remarks, we continually disrupt ourselves. We want to see what is the generation coming going to look forward to. And so we have a team that always continually think and think and think of what can be implemented that makes a difference. So correctly said, we're a bank, not just of today, but a bank that is going to go with you ahead into the future.
But this is the main goal?
The goal of the bank is to be a bank of systemic importance and of relevance. I want to emphasize and underscore relevance across the different jurisdictions where we operate. That bank that the ordinary person on the street will be able to identify with and say, this is an African institution for African people, for African objectives, and playing in a space that ensures that in spite of being African, we are matching up with best global standards. We are proud to be Africans, and we believe that Africa can do great with institutions, strong institutions, collaborating to take Africa to the next level. And as United Bank for Africa, we believe that is our heritage, we believe that is the direction, we believe that is the focus, and we are fully committed to ensuring that Africa develops as a continent.
I would like to hear from you one of opinions. The approach that has been recurrent and on the debates of efficiency of the financial systems is electronic banking, as you mentioned earlier. How do you look at the evolution of the e-banking in Mozambique? And is it responding to the real needs of the citizens? And what experience the UBA can share with the people?
Well, e-banking, to be fair, has taken off in Mozambique. I did mention earlier that tele-density was at certain levels. But more and more, on a daily basis, I'm seeing interest in digital channels, which essentially speaks to e-banking. So I would say it's a journey. It is a journey. And especially where, again, you have quite a very large population residing in the rural areas. But more and more, and especially with channels that ensure that even if you do not have most sophistication that some other telephones, for example, provide, you still are able to do banking services. So e-banking, first of all, from the context of financial institutions, and e-banking also from the context of mobile telephone operators who also provide services like the M-Pesa, we know, like the e-Mola, M-Cash, have been able to ensure that at least gradually, slowly but surely, banking services are getting much more widespread in the digital context in Mozambique.
So, my last question is not properly a question. It's like some advice do you give to the youth, to the young people? How can use the financial services to develop their initiatives, the entrepreneurship? How can the youth people can use, for example, the services that are available in UBA? How can youth people can use UBA to access the markets? How can the youth develop their business?
Right. Yeah. I think that's a very loaded question, and frankly, one of the things that excites me as a person about Mozambique is a very youthful population.
Yeah.
When you have a youthful population and that generation is well guided and supported to fulfill their right aspirations, then the future of the country is already in a state where you can be assured that things are going to be well. So one of the things that we pay a lot of attention to as UBA is that generation that we call youth. So first of all, in terms of even offerings, we have different products that are channeled to youth, even right from the education, right from infancy, different schemes that ensure that you're able to make a plan for education, make a plan, a savings plan for different aspirations you have in life. But more than anything else, the entrepreneurship program that the group provides is one that I will encourage every youth in Mozambique to leverage on. We have the website available, and obviously we share on our channels, on our Instagram, on our Twitter. It's important for every person who has an aspiration as a youth, as a young person, to go into entrepreneurship, to start to learn certain things that will help you in upskilling and ultimately being successful in what you want to do. Our channels are there to support, and one of the things we have also done as a bank is to ensure that our channels are not just seen as channels for banking services, but channels that ensure that your lifestyle is integrated with what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. So as a bank, we want to ensure that for every person that has an aspiration to get to the next level, as a young person in Mozambique, we're able to provide not just financial literacy, which is essentially guiding you the way to go, yes, financial support, which is access to loans, where we're able to say, okay, this is what you need, and this is our support in that area. Also mentorship, aligning people, matching people with other successful people that ensures that ultimately you're able to grow within the context of professional experience, not just book knowledge, not just what you learn on the pages of papers, but from real experience of people. So we have a whole lot of opportunities we want to expose young people to in the market that ensures that as they grow, they are also seeing that there's a light out of the tunnel for a young person within the context of the Mozambican environment. I would also like to mention we as an institution also support other initiatives like essay competition, for example, that drives people to want to pay attention to education essentially. We also have initiatives around reading that essentially makes young people want to read and read and read a lot more. You know, one of the things that they say is that in Africa we have a challenge that many times we do not like to read. So the consciousness and realizing that the more we expose our people to reading, the more they upskill themselves, the more they get empowered, the more knowledge they have, and the more confident they are to engage the market, to engage the globe, to engage the future opportunities. And so those are initiatives we are rolling out as an institution just to impact. Impact is what we want to make in the lives of the young people of Mozambique. And as an institution, having done that, we will say to ourselves, we've been successful, not just as a financial institution, but as one institution that has added value to the lives and the economies of African countries.
I would like to thank you once again, Mr. Rotimi Morohunfola, CEO of United Bank for Africa, for joining the Moztech. We really appreciate this dialogue, and we expect the people will take notes for what United Bank for Africa has been doing in our country and worldwide, and what kind of technological solution has been introduced to help people to have more access to the bank, specifically the United Bank for Africa. So thank you once again.
Thank you very much, Mateo. See you at Moztech next year.
Ok, thank you. E a nossa entrevista aqui na Moztech, na sua 7ª edição, termina por aqui. Teremos muito mais conversas ainda nesta edição para falar, portanto, de outros temas relacionados com o desenvolvimento das tecnologias e como é que as tecnologias estão a ajudar, portanto, a melhoria da qualidade de vida dos cidadãos. Até a próxima.